wanted to talk to you all about what we've been sort of calling responsible intelligence. It's something that I've been spending quite a bit of time sort of thinking about due to the nature of my work that I'm doing within this community. It also occurs to me that I'm very new to this community. This is the first time I'm speaking to an audience like this. So allow me to introduce myself a bit. I'm a software and cloud engineer by trade. That's what I do sort of every day. I've spent the vast majority of my 22-year tech industry career building and scaling systems that operate entirely online. I am the Chief Technology Officer for ScaleType, a professional development platform specifically targeting librarians and information professionals. And speaking of the information community, I'm relatively a newbie to this community, despite having spent the last year building technology for it. So I'm thankful to the organizers for inviting me. This means a lot on a number of levels. So I'd like to take you on a brief journey, one that led me to some profound shifts in the way I look at and use, or rather the way I look at the technology that I use to solve people's problems. Let's start with a story, more specifically a user story. As a user, I would like to find relevant and quality content for my professional development so that I can advance my career. Those of you who have worked in software development or helped to define software product roadmaps will find the structure of this user story quite familiar. It is a short description of a feature and its benefits told from the perspective of the user, of the type of user it is intended to benefit. We'll come back to this a few more times, but keep that in the background thread of your mind as we proceed through the next points. As engineers, our view of the world can be quite simple. We see technical problems that need technical solutions. It's our comfort zone. Allow me to demonstrate. When my product team hands me this story, basically, I try to approach it. I try to break it down in the following ways. I see user identity, right? This means that we need to know who's using the software. I see the requirement to have a search capability, right? We need to start indexing in content and make it searchable and discoverable. We'll want to likely suggest auto corrections based on what other users are, based on misspellings from other users that we've captured over in the past as well. Maybe we might even want to surface popular searches at some point. I see relevance. Right? We will need to understand what's relevant to this specific user. That means we will use previous behavior to find out what the user likes or finds interesting. I see ratings or content quality ratings. That's something that can be very subjective, right? So maybe this is where, because it's a moving target, maybe this is where we allow for crowdsourced ratings, right? Allow the community itself to determine what is considered quality content or not, right? That means we need to capture all users' likes and dislikes, not simply the user who's seeking to get benefit from this particular feature. Armed with these requirements, the desire to offer the best experience possible and the impetus really to not reinvent any wheels, I start shopping. And let me tell you, this is the best part of my job. That's me, brimming with excitement, clearly. Why do I get excited? Well, because problems like these can now be solved extremely well using AI and machine learning tools. It has never been easier for organizations, large and small, and even individuals on a tight budget to leverage AI and ML technologies that less than 5 years ago were inaccessible or accessible only to large tech companies. Using AI and ML technology cloud services that cost really pennies on a dollar per compute hour, we can discover insights and relationships in text using natural language processing. We can provide personalized content recommendations tailored to your profile and your content consumption habits. We can use advanced OCR to extract key terms from an uploaded resume to automatically map interest to your profile, and on it goes. It seems like every week, every month, every quarter, new technologies pop up from either from open source community initiatives or from commercial vendors and cloud vendors. It's a regular cadence. New things are coming up, things that are brand new, and things that are actually leveraging existing technologies in new and innovative ways. So as a technologist tasked with engineering this seemingly benign but useful product feature, a few months ago, I would have simply jumped in and solved a technical problem, right? Having selected my AI and ML tools of choice, I would have broken up the work into its component parts and have my engineering team and I work diligently to deliver the capability to our users. That was the plan, and it was a simple one. Then I read this book, then this report, and this one, and a few others like them. I heard countless stories and in questions and discussions related to privacy and data ownership during even our own monthly product updates with customers and prospects. As I continue to immerse myself into the information community, the concerns get clearer with each one of these signals. The technologies we build have bias because we have bias. The content and opportunities produced or surfaced using these technologies can often perpetuate the status quo. And most importantly, for people like me who develop technologies using these building blocks, right? We need to handle personal and private data with care. It doesn't happen on its own. Just bringing these tools into your world to solve problems and to create products and to solve a particular set of problems for your domain, that doesn't come with a sort of a native way of actually fulfilling and protecting and sort of preventing that data from being misused in ways we can't even think of yet. So I have a confession. I've been taking my own privacy for granted ever since I've been online, right? I can't even remember when that was at this point. I have a 22-year career now within the industry, was using, you know, the web and it was still in its infancy. I'm not gonna say how old I am, but by the time I was finishing high school, you know, I had my first online business because, you know, the technology was making that possible. And I sort of fell in love with technology. I fell in love with the internet, with the web and all that it had to offer. But never once did I really sit down and think, okay, like what happens to all the websites I've ever been at? What happens to all the places I've just left breadcrumbs of my data, right? In places. Every now and then I'll get a notification from a bank security feature saying, hey, your email address was found on the dark web. It was compromised in some way. I'm sure some of you have gotten those as well, right? Every once in a while, you'll hear how some institution whose job is to, or rather whose profit motive is to collect data and share it with others, right? Our own data that we don't have any say on, to collect that and sell it to others. Every now and then they'll get a breach and your data all of a sudden is now scattered out in the wind for who knows what to do with, right? So for the longest time, I've left it to others, right, whoever that might be, to keep profit-motivated entities honest with regards to my data and my online privacy. Now that I am responsible for the technology direction of one of those profit-motivated companies, I am forced to reconcile the data or the privacy needs of my users with the impact of the technology I'm using to solve problems for them. Make no mistake, whether you're for-profit or non-profit, you too will need to reconcile your use of AI and ML technologies with the impact they have on your employees, your users, your patrons, your community. I promise you some practical approaches, things that you can do to more thoughtfully take a privacy-minded approach to problem solving in this new world of capabilities. So let's get practical. If you recall, part of the data, we need to make this a great search experience, and to provide useful recommendations for our users. This requires that we not only identify them, but also that we need to collect some behavior data from them over time. So let's iterate through the design of the architecture we need to support this capability. Let's take our user, Alex, a known entity on the platform. Alex is passionate about their professional development and takes advantage of all the ways we expose learning opportunities, be it through desktop web application or on the go using mobile device, or through collaboration tools such as Slack or Teams. As Alex interacts with these front ends, they relay meaningful behavior like page views, bookmarks, likes to another layer where one or more backends host the business logic that supports these learning experiences. This backend layer, in turn, also interacts with a layer responsible for storage, where we not only store PII, personally identifiable information, but also use that to generate reports, do behavior analysis, and produce machine learning data sets that are used for this and future feature development. Now let me ask you, can you see where we went wrong with our design? You can probably identify a number of concerns here, but for the sake of simplicity, let's focus on one. What happens if Alex no longer wishes to use our platform and invokes their right to be forgotten by our organization, by our company, by our product? Can you imagine the effort involved in tracking down all the places where we've scattered Alex's data? And no, you can't cheat and use this nicely documented artifact to track all these places. Most projects aren't even that well documented, or at least if they start out like so, that documentation degrades over time. If you don't believe me, ask any software engineer off the street to confirm this. Documentation is not our forte. Now let's try this again and see where we can do better. As with our previous architecture, Alex goes through the same channels for their professional development, generates the same exact interaction data, but at this layer, we have a singular opportunity to selectively anonymize Alex's data as we collect it, and before it gets scattered across various storage systems and analysis tools. Can you see what's different now? Now, rather than propagating Alex's personally identifiable information through the entire storage layer down to the tools being used to analyze this data, and who knows, maybe you have partners that you work with that you need to share data with, right? Alex has never made an agreement with those partners, right? Alex didn't say you could use their data, and share that with a partner unless you had the forethought to ask Alex to waive that right. But over time, it gets harder and harder and harder to know where an individual's private information lands. If you want examples, all you have to do is just do a quick Google search, and you can see the headlines about breaches of so-and-so system whom you had a one-to-one relationship with, right? Somehow your data ended up in a third-party partner's database, and that system got compromised, and now your data, which you thought you were giving to one organization, is now out there because another organization that doesn't have as much stringent security practices failed to secure. Now your data again out in the wind. So this approach that we're taking here right? Anonymizing that data as it gets through all the different layers of our technology stack, right? This approach is a much more sensible one, because what we're doing is keeping PII data at the edge of the analysis tools. We're preventing it from being scattered across the platform over time. And as we add new tools, new technologies, new algorithms, new ways of deriving value and of surfacing new capabilities, right, in our projects, in our products, in our applications, right, in our reporting, right, as we add these things in, the data is still centralized. We know where our PII lives, and we know that other systems, we know what shape and form, right, other systems, what shape and form they get that data in. And you don't lose from an architecture, from a design standpoint, you don't lose the ability to link that PII data, the one that says, okay, this is Alex's information. You don't lose that, because you can still tag information that you're passing on down the line. You can still tag that with some unique identifier. And that unique identifier, you can, as long as Alex chooses to remain a part of your community, as long as Alex chooses to use your product, your project, whatever the case may be, right? You'll still always be able to relay to link Alex's data back to those unique identifiers that you use to propagate through the rest of your system. But the moment Alex decides they no longer want to be part of your organization or your project or your product, right? You can actually detach and decouple Alex's identity from that anonymized, from that data which was previously linked, thereby allowing it to be anonymized literally with the click of a button. Now, this is something that is not done out of the box. This is something that you have to actually think about ahead of time. And this example that I'm giving you here is well suited for a greenfield approach. And by greenfield, I mean a new project that you're standing up off the ground, and sort of thinking of all the ways that this data is going to be used. But you can also employ the same machine learning technologies, right, in existing systems. You can use natural language processing to identify things like addresses, zip codes and social security numbers, whatever that private or sensitive information is. You can use that very technology to help you identify wherever it may be within your domain, all the places you store data, right? Whether it be structured or unstructured, you can identify these things, at least catalog where PII exists within your domain, and hopefully have a plan in place to actually tackle that. But the technology can be used either when you're building something brand new, or if you're retrofitting something, or if you want to address some of the discrepancies with regards to how you treat user data. So let's boil down some key takeaways from this design exercise. You have to identify sensitive data and where it's coming from. You have to see, the secure and trustworthy systems don't happen organically. You have to design them as such. You have to keep privacy in mind when you're building these systems, or when you're perhaps talking to a vendor, right, whom you think has a solution that can solve a particular problem for you in your research or otherwise. You have to be able to ask those questions of them, right? How are you protecting data? How do you treat sensitive information? These are things you should be asking them. And for those who are producing these systems or are creating them and building them, you can deliver great experiences without putting user information at risk. I believe the information profession is still very much in the early days of understanding the impact that AI and ML technologies will have on the people that it serves, for better or for worse. For the technologists in the room, the builders, the product managers, the entrepreneurs, and the visionaries don't punt on digging into the uncomfortable privacy and security issues that surround user data. When taking on these new projects, we should all insist on having a plan for how to treat personal information and how to confidently and cost effectively honor requests to be forgotten from our users. It is our responsibility as those closest to the technology to surface its trade-offs to our community of decision makers and project sponsors. It is our responsibility to design and build systems with user privacy in mind. Although it might be hard to tell these days, but privacy is not a feature. It is a responsibility. I thank you very much for your time and attention. And I know in some of this, I've because of the broad distribution that we have in the audience, some of this will be a bit more technical for some and not technical enough for others. That is what it is. So I encourage you to reach out. These are the Twitter handles where you can reach out to me. Jay Boursiquot for me personally, and Skill Type for the organization, for the product that my team and I are building. Hopefully, what I've mentioned here today, hopefully that gets you thinking, because again, I've taken my own privacy for granted for so many years, and now that I'm part of this information professionals community, right? Now that I've spoken to a number of librarians, now that I've sort of now that I travel these circles, and I hear the concerns, and I hear sort of the hesitation sometimes, right, with regards to sort of tools and software, and how, you know, sometimes I'm like, well, this thing does exactly what you need, and then they challenge me and says, well, how do I turn it off, right? As one speaker previously mentioned, right? So sometimes, again, as a technologist, I get excited about how to solve these problems with technology without thinking about what is the implication, what is the impact, right, of actually feeding that data, feeding more and more data into these systems, and how are they then used for good or for bad, right? So I encourage you to challenge people like me, right, the technologists who want to play with the cool toys, right, and build things, because as engineers, as technologists, we get, you know, this shiny new object syndrome kind of thing, right? We want to use these technologies to solve problems, but also sometimes we can't think far enough ahead, right, in terms of implications. And this community has been asking some hard questions way before I ever got here, right? And because of that, that influence is sort of asking me to sort of question some of the decisions that we make as technologists as well. So in a way, I'm thanking you for me being part of this community, because I'm learning so much from you, and that is affecting how I build the technologies that I build. So without rambling on any further, I do look forward to questions if you have some now, and also the roundtable that we're going to have in a few minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Johnny. It's fantastic talk. I appreciate it. A couple quick questions for you before we dig into the roundtable with everyone else. Some specific questions for you. In your talk, you kind of circled around a lot of issues, like the right to be forgotten, which are very EU specific, or at least at the moment, requirements. I mean, they're maybe moral requirements, but do you see a US version of something like GDPR on the horizon?
Interestingly enough, we're seeing more and more states start to introduce some more stringent policies and guidelines and mandates really around how users' information are treated. California, I believe, less than a few months ago, I can't recall the name of the new laws, but a few months ago they released some laws, and pretty much every year we've seen the introduction of these laws, because let's face it, technology companies, and that's usually we're the culprits there. We push the limit as far as we can, a lot of times crossing it in some ambiguous ways, right? So personalization, right? We can say, basically, we can rationalize the fact that, yes, we want to know everything there is to know about a user, so that we can provide a better experience. I mean, the other day I pulled up, if you ever want to scare yourself, go on accounts.google.com, right? If you don't know about that already. And this is where Google, and I don't want to pick on Google specifically, but it is sort of emblematic of sort of what I'm seeking to put forth here. If you go to accounts.google.com and you look for activities, right? Your activity on the web, and you look at all the things that Google knows about you. It can be scary, right? Like I looked at my YouTube searches, for example, and I can see that Google knows that I was searching for how to build a tree house for my daughters in the backyard, right? And all of a sudden I'm seeing advertisement, right, for things of that nature, right? You know, as I, even on my mobile device, and as I go from device to device, or from website to website, right? So in a way, you think, okay, this is useful, I guess, but like, again, to use what somebody else asked before, like, can I turn it off, right? Like, how do I, like, this borders on creepy, right? And Eric Schmidt, from, you know, a previous CEO of Google, he used to have this saying about the creepy line, right? You want to basically, they pride themselves on going up to the creepy line and hopefully not crossing it, right? But to me, as a user, right, not as a technologist, but as a user of online software, the more regulation, right, it's the only thing I can rely on, right? The regulation, you know, the for us, it's we have to sort of pressure our representatives, right? We have to pressure the people who should be looking out for us to apply pressure to technology companies that, yes, although they may provide us useful information in the form of useful content, or be useful for our lives, really, but at the end of the day, we have to have some control ourselves, right? And technology companies are not going to do that on their own, at least not the ones that are as profit driven as some companies out there. But to answer your question, our stance, or my personal stance, is that, okay, what is the most stringent regulation out there that we can abide by, right? And we look to that as the North Star, and says, hey, if this is the current state of the art in terms of sort of a user privacy, right, safeguards, we want to aim for that, because what we're noticing is that the tide is starting to shift a little, and as more pressure, community pressure, gets applied at the state level and at the local level, right, you start to see these regulations bubble up. And if you want to know how costly it is to retrofit sort of guidelines in a technology platform, all you have to do is ask any organization that has had to retrofit to be compliant with GDPR, right? They will tell you that it is a very, very costly thing to do. So we're trying to build in these capabilities into our technology platform from day one, so that, one, we can actually sleep better at night from a moral standpoint, but we can also do safeguard users' information securely and well, right, from a technology standpoint. I know it's a rambly answer, but it touches on so many things that I kind of had to touch on those.
No, definitely. It's a great answer. I appreciate it.